The Senate is about to undergo a trial to determine whether or not Trump incited an insurrection or if he can ever hold public office again. But the question remains, what about those other lawmakers who aided and abetted the Donald? My guest today is John Nichols, whose recent piece makes the case that Josh Hawley, who relished, by the way, his role as leader of Trump's seditious caucus, has got to go. John is the writer about politics for The Nation. As you know, he's the national affairs correspondent there, and he's written like 100 books. In fact, all the books behind him in this shot, John has literally written himself. Kidding.
Maybe a couple of them. I wrote something in them.
Welcome to the program. Thank you for being here with us. I'm always happy when I see it's your day to come on. In your recent piece, Expelled Josh Hawley, you make the case for why this character needs to be removed from office. Let's just go over quickly, who is Josh Hawley and what kind of role did he play in inciting the violent mob at the Capitol?
So Josh Hawley's probably the smartest guy in the Senate, maybe even smarter than Ted Cruz, which is a reminder.
Hard?
No, Ted Cruz is very smart, and this is an interesting thing. It's a reminder of why Bond films always have an evil genius, because you can be very, very smart and very, very wrong, morally, politically, and in all sorts of other ways. And Josh Hawley is that. He's an exceptionally well-educated young man who, has went to the very best schools, got, all the academic credentials, and frankly was raised up by the Missouri Republican Party, including the elites of the Missouri Republican Party, on a very fast track. Became Attorney General in 2016, went immediately off to the Senate a couple of years later, and kind of hit the ground running very, very fast. He's written books, he's lectured at colleges, he's done all the big stuff. And the thought was that Josh Hawley was going to be sort of the face of the new conservatism. Very, very conservative, no question of that, but also, just a sharper tack in the box than, most of the members of the Senate caucus and all of the members of the House caucus. And so there was a lot of excitement about him. There was also something interesting about him because he would occasionally align with Democrats, crossing lines of partisanship and even ideology, working with Bernie Sanders on trying to get bigger direct payments for Americans back in December. And so, there's a lot of interest in the guy. He is unfortunately something else as well, and that is exceptionally ambitious. He's probably the most ambitious member of the Senate, and that's saying a big deal. Certainly he has competition from Ted Cruz, and I understand that obviously, Ted Cruz is always going to be a bad player. But Hawley did something that no one else did. On December 30th, after Donald Trump had begged a group of his most loyal senators to support the challenge to the Electoral College results from states across the country on January 6th. And they all had said no, because A, it was a bad idea, B, it was wrong, there wasn't a reason to do it, and C, Mitch McConnell was working really hard to prevent senators from doing this because he knew it was going to go bad. Josh Hawley suddenly announced, I'm going to object. When he did that action, not what Donald Trump did on January 6th, but that action, when Josh Hawley said, I'll do this objection, that's what animated the January 6th protests. That's what made them real, what made it make sense to come to Washington, make sense, I say in quotes, that amplified what Trump was going to do, that put all of these pieces together. And so you can make a really, really strong case that it was Josh Hawley, not Donald Trump, who was the most responsible for what happened on January 6th. Now, I don't absolve Trump in any way, and I recognize fully that Trump is the kind of the core of this thing. He's the animating factor. But as I said, it could not have happened without Josh Hawley. Once Hawley came across and said he would object, then, of course, Cruz and his ambition and all that said, oh, well, then I will too. And a group of other senators and many, many House members did. But remember, that wouldn't have happened without Hawley.
Does he have enough support in his home state? Has there been any pushback from his constituents about his role, or are they all good on you, Jay Hawley?
No, it's important to understand that Missouri is a historic swing state. It's been relatively Republican in recent years, but it's been a battleground state. Historically, it's sent Democrats to the Senate until not that long ago, including Claire McCaskill, until 2018. It's had Democratic governors until quite recently. So yeah, there's a lot of objection from Democrats, as you might expect. There's also, fascinatingly enough, an objection from some Republicans, including Jack Danforth, the former senator from Missouri, one of the more respected figures, not just in Missouri politics, but national politics, who nurtured Hawley up. He was literally Hawley's mentor, and he has now completely broken with Hawley and said Hawley was, again, as I've suggested, responsible for what happened on January 6th, that it wouldn't have happened without him. Also,
like he created a Frankenstein monster and it got out of control. Oh,
and to Danforth's credit, he's been very open and very deeply apologetic, and I respect. I think we have to let people do that, to say, I got it wrong. I got it very, very wrong. Interestingly enough, the two major daily newspapers in Missouri, the St. Louis Post-Dispatch and the Kansas City Star, have both called for Hawley to resign from the Senate. They say he should not be there. And the Kansas City Star has explicitly said he should be expelled from the Senate, that the Senate should vote him out. Additionally, Cori Bush, the new congresswoman from the St. Louis area, has said that he should be held to account and has called him out, as well as other Republicans in this regard. In fact, Cori Bush has been very much in the forefront. So there's a lot of Missouri objection to Josh Hawley.
What is the mechanism to expel Hawley?
Well, the Senate controls its own operations, and this is an interesting dynamic. As Jamie Raskin, who's the lead impeachment manager for the second impeachment of Donald Trump, says, the House and Senate can impeach, try, and convict a president, but a president cannot remove somebody from the Senate. There's only two ways for somebody goes out of the Senate. They're voted out by the people of their state. Hawley won't be on the ballot again for a number of years. Or the Senate can vote to expel a member. And it's a tough process. There's no question of that.
Is it just a simple majority?
No, you've got to get to a supermajority. And at least depending on, I will apologize. That depends a little bit on how it's interpreted. As with all of these things, the ethics committee has to take the issue, has to determine the proper sanction. And I'll note that 7 members of the Senate have written a letter to the ethics committee asking that the committee explore ways to sanction Hawley, be that reprimand, censure, or expulsion. Sheldon Whitehouse has been very much in the forefront of this, Sherrod Brown as well. And both of them have used the word expel. And so this is something that I will acknowledge to you completely is very, very hard. It's not an easy thing to do. And I'm not going to lie to you or create a fantasy that this is going to happen tomorrow.
But it should.
It should. And this becomes the sort of critical way for us to start to think about this. Donald Trump should be tried and convicted for his incitement of insurrection, for his high crimes against the republic. Frankly, he should be impeached, tried, and convicted for his handling of COVID-19.
There's a number of good reasons why we impeach him.
So we should know that to be true, but we should also know to be true that Josh Hawley should be expelled from the United States Senate. And the reason, and I would add Cruz and Ron Johnson and several others, the reason that we put this down on paper and why we make this advocacy, why you and I are talking about it now, is not because it's easy, not because it will necessarily happen, but because it is what, from a moral standpoint and from a political standpoint, should happen at this point. And frankly, for lack of a better way of putting it, we're putting ourselves on the right side of history. The truth of the matter is, if you look back to the history of the country, you can see situations where people should have been expelled, where people should have been held to account, where there was no question. And the fact is, this is one of those moments.
John, the likelihood is he will be left, and possibly ejected by his voters if we're lucky. What can we expect from him over the next, you said, what is it, 2-4 years until he's out again? Oh, it has to be voted out if we're lucky. What can we expect of him in the Senate?
Almost ridiculous, sometimes dangerous, other times, always, over the top ambition. That's what to expect from Josh Hawley. The reason that he said that he would object on December 30th and then followed through on January 6th, even after the invasion of the Capitol, even after the deaths, the violence and everything, why he pursued this thing is because he wants to be the next leader of the Trump wing of the Republican Party. Now, I think that's very, very hard because I think Trump wants to remain the leader of the Trump wing of either the Republican Party or a new so-called Patriot Party, however they do these things.
We have a horrendous photo of this party.
Yeah, that's kind of that wing, yeah. And you see, none of these people were ever invited, to the lecture halls of Oxford or Stanford or wherever Josh Hawley was coming up politically. Josh Hawley's an elitist. There's no doubt of that. And yet he looks at these crowds, and admittedly, I'll bet you that a number of these people are college grads and smart folks. And, I'm not going to play that game of saying they're all ignorant. But if we look at this crowd, this is not the crowd of people that Josh Hawley associated with in most cases coming up politically. But he knows that he needs these people. He needs this angry mass of people to be a part of his base if he can do what he wants to do. And that is to be the youngest Republican president in American history.
So he's not necessarily, does his ideology match up with these people's? Is he just a trickle down guy? Like, where is he on the spectrum of Republicans?
I doubt
is it just ambition?
It is ambition. I doubt that he knows his ideology per se. But he is, again, I really emphasize this, he's very, very smart. And so what he's doing is looking at the map, right? The political map, not the map of the country, but what's there, what's available, where the divisions are. And he's thinking, okay, how do you build the next Republican Party, right? And that is a Republican Party that can, in a moment of anger, maybe a moment of economic downturn, all the challenges that might arise, but also a moment where it is possible to exploit racism, xenophobia, class divides, to do all that. How do you build that party, right? And his calculus has been, it is to align with where Trump is at, to basically be Trump's loyalist foot soldier, which he was during the January 6th objection and its aftermath. And what I think you're seeing with Hawley is a desire to put together a economic populist, a little more economically populist, socially extreme conservative, anti-abortion, bad on gay rights, bad on a host of other issues, political party that does, in fact, traffic in racism, xenophobia, conspiracy theories, etc. And I think the best way to understand it is that at this point, whether it's his ideology or his ambition that takes him there, he wants to create a Republican Party that is very parallel to the European far-right parties that we've seen in France and other countries.
What would you say, as we wind up the interview, to someone who argues that it's time to move on from the Trump administration and focus on making progressive change under Biden? There are a number, let's just say, of very pressing, let's just call it, issues that need to be dealt with immediately.
I understand the pressing issues, and I've been very passionate about focusing on them. We need, look, Biden's inherited a crisis with a pandemic, economic downturn, unmet outcry for racial justice. It's 400 years old now, and military-industrial complex that's out of control, climate crisis. The issues are real, and you have to focus on them. You can't just do accountability. But with that said, I will tell you that the notion that you just move on, that you go for unity, bipartisanship, forget about what happened before, is loser politics. That is straight on, absolute, unquestionably loser politics. If you don't hold people to account, if you don't point a finger of blame at those who created the crises, then it will not be possible to advance the level of change that you want. Accountability drives policy. There's simply no question of that. Franklin Roosevelt knew that. That's why Franklin Roosevelt talked about the people on the other side of the fights he was in and said, I welcome their hatred. He was very blunt of, I don't want to unify with these people. I don't want to do a bipartisan project with those people. If somebody wants to come and align with me, who's a conservative or a Republican, that's fine. We'll do good things. But I'm not going to bend. I'm not going to concede to people who hate, like the New Deal or the projects that he was involved in. And that's exactly the way that it should be seen today. Nothing in this regard has changed. And if Joe Biden bends too far to the sedition caucus in the House and Senate, to the Republicans who literally tried to prevent him from becoming president, they will ultimately succeed in their project in 2022 or 2024.
Yes.
So saying no to them is critical.
As a former psychotherapist, you don't negotiate with terrorists. Sorry to bring up a George W. Bush, but in this case, you just, when people are that way, you have boundaries. That's what you do. And I think it's the same in politics.
And I would even go, I don't think you even have to go to the more extreme statements of like a Bush. Like I'll just say, look, what do we know from children, right? At some point you have to set boundaries. At some point you have to say, no, I know you want to do that, but we're not going to do that. Somebody has to be the adult in the room. There is simply no question that the sedition caucus is not made up of the adults in the room. These are bad players.
Do you have indications that Biden will do that, will be the adult in the room?
I hope he will. He certainly was in the first week. The executive orders were good. Some of his statements were good, saying that they've got to do the 1.9 trillion in that. On the other hand, I know that it is his instinct to be a unifier. I respect that. And I understand that. As we speak, he's preparing to meet with a group of 10 Republican senators who wanted to dramatically dial back his $1.9 trillion COVID relief package. If he does that, if he bends to them, that would be the beginning of a process of failure. If they cut back on the $1,400 relief payment, which should be a $2,000 payment, if they narrow who it should go to, if they do any of these things, I promise you, it's a snowball. It will be going on and it will get worse. And the fact of the matter is, leave you with this basic thought. Democrats can pass a $1.9 trillion COVID relief package. They can get people $2,000 checks, not $1,400, but $2,000 checks. They can do all the things that people want to have done with the majorities they have. Joe Biden and Democrats in the House and Senate can do this. And Joe Biden's first priority should be to unite Democrats around that basic principle that they can govern. And he should show the American people that that's possible.
John Nichols, writer at the National Affairs correspondent for The Nation. Thank you so much for being here with us today. I look forward to your next visit.
I'm honored to be with you.